Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. This is an E90 BMW. It's got an N54 engine, and in this video, we are going to change the oil filter housing gasket. This is a very important DIY to do. You have to change this gasket because it goes bad on every car, every engine after a certain point of time. And when it goes bad, it leaks oil down onto the drive belt. And if you let that go too long, that belt will shred and it could wrap itself around the crankshaft pulley and wedge past the front crankshaft seal and get inside the engine. And that becomes a huge mess that you don't want to deal with. So it's definitely something that needs to be changed. On the N54 engine, it's a little bit more involved because you have to unbolt the intake manifold and lift it back a little bit in order to get access to one of the bolts. You don't have to do this on the N52 engine. On the N54 you do. So like I said, it's a little more involved, but at the end of the day, it's not that difficult, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's get started. There are some common steps that you need to do before you do any engine repairs on this vehicle, and that is removing the cabin air filter up here along with the big tray right here. And first step in doing that is to disconnect this wiring harness, press on this little thing, kind of like that. And this inner one, you just pop these down like that, there, and there. There are going to be 6 bolts, one, and then another one here, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6. I've already removed them. They are 8mm fasteners, so you just remove them and lift this up and out. To remove this tray, we need to remove this cover so that we get access to an 8mm fastener right here, and we also have to unclip this wire that is clipped in here. If your wire is still taped to these clips, that is, but they just pull off like that. And same thing here. I've actually tried to retape my wire to this, but I don't think I did a very good job. To get this off, there's snaps on either side. You just kind of lift up with your finger there, and then again on this side. It's easy for me to do that side, a little more difficult for me to do this side one-handed, but there you go. That reveals the 8mm fastener right there. Same kind of thing on this side. My clips are gone for this wire, but this is clipped into the air quality sensor, so you just unplug that, and I'll lay my wire aside, and the same thing, I'll get this cover off. If you have these little rubber things, you gotta loosen those so you can get the cover off, and then 8mm. Now we can lift this right on out of here. Now we need to remove the engine cover, the valve cover here. Remove this. These are 5mm fasteners. There's 2 back here as well. And one kind of hiding right down here. You gotta spy it. And now we can just lift this right on out. This is not the valve cover, this is the engine cover. Now we need to remove this air snorkel right here. It's bolted here and here. They are T20 fasteners. We need to remove the air filter housing right here. It's actually bolted into the intake tube. There's a ring clamp here, which is a 6mm fastener, and there's another one back here. And then you see there are these 3 rubber grommets that are stuck onto these metal posts. We're going to have to pull those off. Okay, we're going to unbolt this ring clamp right here. Make it pretty loose. It needs to be looser than you think it does. Same for this one. By the way, I really love this flexible 6mm. I use it all the time on BMWs just for this, for removing ring clamps. If I can remember, I'll throw a link in the description. So with these rubber grommets, they should just pull off. If yours are a little stuck, you can get some silicone spray, spray it on there. Silicone spray just lubes up rubber like nobody's business. Now this line right here will have to unclip from the side, and you want to actually get it out too because it's sort of in the way. So the way to do that is to just squeeze on either end here and here, and that should come off like that. That's your vacuum line that's going back to the brake booster. Don't worry about the vacuum that's escaping. Now this, at this point, should be just stuck on to the intake manifold with little rubber grommets. So you can just pull and you get it out there. Get it out on the other side, pull it out. There you go. Looks like we got a piece of broken something right here. I did not do that. Sorry for the interruption, but we have to thank this week's sponsor, which is OEMBimmerparts.com. I love this website. They've got super fast 2-day shipping. They've got multiple warehouses all over the US so they can get your parts out to you as fast as possible. And I love their website. It's well categorized. There's not a lot of extra stuff. It's just all the most popular parts that you're gonna need, and they're the OEM brands. They do also have some quality aftermarket brands as well if that's what you're looking for. So if you are in the market for BMW parts of any kind, please check out OEMBimmerparts.com. In case you didn't know, this is your oil filter housing. Your oil filter is in here. The gasket is right here. Now, it has already been changed on this car. I'm just making this video more for demonstration purposes rather than needing to do it on this car. Just so you know, I'm going to change it anyway. It's a very cheap gasket, but I just want to show you how to do it. Now, I know this is done before. It has been done before because I can see that the bolts have been mangled right here. Plus, I do have the history on this car. Now, it looks really easy to do. You have one fastener here, and one more fastener, but it's right back here. It's right back in there. And as you can see, that intake manifold folds right down over the top of it. You just cannot get any kind of a wrench or socket or anything on that. And that's why this intake manifold needs to be loosened and it needs to get pulled back just a little bit, just so you can expose enough room to get on that bolt. That's it. That's the whole reason this job is more complicated than it needs to be. On the M52 engine, or I'm sorry, the N52 engine, the intake manifold is different and it comes out a little bit more, and there's all the room in the world to get on that bolt and remove it without removing the intake manifold. So our next task is to remove the charge pipe from the intake manifold. There's a clip right here that just pulls up. So that'll allow us to kind of push the charge pipe down off of there, but charge pipe is bolted to like a bracket on the engine right here. I believe this is a T40. No, it's a T30. T30. I don't think that wants to come out. I think it's clipped in. Yeah, it is. So let's just push this down. We only need to get it down so much. There. We've got it down, so now the intake manifold is going to come up this way. You don't need to mess with anything else. The only other thing I see here is that these lines for the oxygen sensors, I think are going to be a little in the way. They're a little tight, and they're clipped in right here. So that's like a little, what they call a Christmas tree fastener, what some people call a Christmas tree fastener. So I think if we loosen that and put these up over here, I think that'll give us sort of just enough room. Maybe we can pull this out of here. A little screwdriver, push this clip aside, I believe. Yeah, so, you know, that should give us like enough extension when we just pull the intake manifold back. That should be just fine. So now I think at this point, here, we'll unclip this little oil sensor here as well. Kind of just get that out of the way. At this point, we should just be able to remove these fasteners holding the intake manifold on, lift that sucker back a little bit, just enough to get that bolt right there, that little guy. Now these are going to be 11mm fasteners. BMW likes those on intake manifolds. And you need a magnet when you're doing this because you're going to drop these bolts. See that? So it's a normal bolt on the ends, and then they're nuts on the insides. Ah, I already dropped one. And that will happen. Oh, I got lucky. I just fished and I came up with a catch. But just be very, very careful when you do this. Just go slower than you think you need to go. Okay, for this one, I'm going to use this ratchet because we got to get that bolt up in the corner. Let's pull this wiring harness aside. You can see it's up over there in the corner. And I took off the extension because there wasn't really going to be enough room. But I also still need some kind of extension. Little swivel guy. Yeah, that's perfect. Go careful, and there you go. So I lied to you. There are nuts over here and then just one bolt right on this end right here. So now, let's pull this back. If you see a lot of dust and debris that's going to fall in there, you might want to get a vacuum or a blow nozzle first. I don't really need to move it back this far. Basically just enough to kind of tilt, and then I can get in there. But I sort of want to look in the cylinders and see how much carbon's in there. I'm sure you guys want to see that too, right? Short answer, a lot. That's kind of about what I was expecting to see. Really hard to get this light in the right angle. Yeah, so they're pretty gnarly. They definitely need to be walnut blasted, and we are going to do it in a future video. You saw how easy it was to pull this intake manifold back. It is not that much more difficult to actually remove it fully from the vehicle. I could do it now. There's probably one or two things attached to it, a wiring harness, and I could muscle that out if I needed to. So here you guys go. You're tight on that bolt through the intake manifold. It's an E10. Ooh, look at that. See, this is the, with this extension and everything, the stubby M12 is kind of struggling. Let's see if the M18 compact 3/8 can do it. Ooh, look at that. My hero. All right, let me use the magnet to get that bolt out of there. So in case anybody was wondering the difference between the stubby M12 and the M18, there is a difference. All right, that is our prize. So I actually have two different E10 sockets that would fit this bolt down here. This one is actually a little too big to get on it without removing this flange right here. This impact one from Harbor Freight, also same thing. I do not, these are all 3/8, and I don't have a 1/4 inch except for this long one. And this long one also will not get on there because, again, this flange is in the way. Now, I could remove this flange. This is what's known as the Mickey Mouse flange, in case anybody doesn't know. It likes to just crack and break. I guess there's just a lot of heat right here. I know that these hoses, or the hoses, were changed on this car somewhat recently. I don't know exactly which ones, but, and I don't know. Looking at this thing, it doesn't look like it's original to the car, but it might be. And I really don't want to mess with it. And I also want to do this in a way such that you don't have to mess with yours either. So let's figure out a way to get that bolt off without even touching this. So your only alternative for something like this is an 8mm 12-point box wrench. You can actually get on that fastener like that. You can get on that fastener and you should be able to crack it loose. That's probably why this fastener is already mangled, because that is what's going to happen when you use a box wrench on an E-Torx fastener. You are going to tend to mangle it. So what I would suggest is push really hard up on the back of that thing when you're cracking it loose, because if you don't put upward pressure like this, it will tend to twist off the bolt, and that's how you round those fasteners. Now, another better option or easier option would be to, if you have a gear wrench, you can toss that thing in there. Again, it's the same principle, but at least you know, it's a little less work, a little bit less work. But I happen to have an actual gear wrench that is an E-Torx, E10. So I knew this thing would come in handy one day. I'm going to use this because this is the least likely thing to round that fastener off. The guy put it on there really tight. Really, really tight. Like a dickhead. Wow. He put it on there way, way too tight. Jeez. I don't like this guy. Yeah, what I need is a small pipe, and I don't have it. Let's just try this again. Okay, I got it. Oh, God, why did this guy do that, man? That sucks. Oop, there we go. Before you do that, put a towel underneath there. All right, guys, I took off that bolt, and a little bit more coolant came out than I was expecting. So What I'm going to do is remove the under tray right here just so I can catch the coolant in my drain pan. Okay, coolant drain pan, ready to go. Before we go any further, let's pull off the oil cap here, because there's a lot of oil in here. Let's just help it drain down. Maybe we'll sop up any extra oil that's in there. Let's get the filter out too. So I'm going to stick some blue towels underneath here, just kind of keep everything off of the belt. Either way, we're going to have to rinse the belt off with some brake clean afterwards. All right, take two. Let's open up the bleeder over here on the side. Leave a little pressure, if there is any. This thing actually might be overfilled, is what it might be, because it's a little bit more than I think should come out, I think. I mean, it's coming out with significant pressure. You know what? Another thing to make it easier, maybe easier, is one of these clamps. A radiator clamp. Let's see if that helps any. Yeah, okay. I think that one's loose enough. Let's get this bolt off. Okay. So we got a lot of leakage down there now. At least we're getting it in the bucket. We can probably do this by hand now. I suspect most of you probably don't have a full coolant bottle the way I do. Again, I think this system was recently serviced. I'm betting that a lot of you have a lot less than this much. So maybe you won't run into this much of a situation. What a pain in the butt. Well, that was easy. So you do not want to get dirt and debris down in these two holes right here, so watch for that. Coolant, you know, it doesn't matter if a couple of particles of dirt get in there. At the end of the day, it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna ruin a bearing or anything like that. There's no bearings in there. It's just gonna be dirt flying around your cooling system for all time. All right, I'm actually gonna put this back on now because it will contain some of the oil. So for the purposes of the camera, I just wanted to flip it over like this so you could see it. And there, you know, in the real world, you'll just kind of lean over, dig the gasket out right there, put the new one in, and put the thing right back on. So, but here, I'm going to turn it, flip it upside down so you can see it. And there's the gasket. It's, you know, it's going to be hard and brittle. This one won't be, obviously, because it's somewhat recently changed. Yeah, looks good. There you go. You take it out, put your new one in. And I have a new one. Let me grab it. So guys, if you have the model that's a 2008 or later that has the oil cooler attached to it, this is what it's going to look like. It'll be sitting right here. And you've got one bolt there, another here, and you're going to need to remove this bolt in order to get at this bolt behind here. In order to take this housing off, and then there's going to be a gasket inside of there. You change that along with your main gasket right there. I'll get that bolt in a second. So yeah, that's what you do. The reason I have this is because I plan to convert this car over to the oil cooler, and I really want to do that right now, but I don't want to make this particular video longer than it needs to be. This video is about changing this oil filter housing gasket. We'll do a separate video for installing one of these on an 07. Okay, I think we are done dripping coolant now. It was a little messier than I wanted it to be honest with you. It should be normally a little easier. I will basically just take some brake clean and just hose this whole area down. It'll be fine. And I do plan to change the drive belts next, basically. So we're good here. All right, nice new gasket. Make sure we're clean. Let's get this right back in place. Okay, now the third one. Let's get it in first. Let me give it the old reach around. Okay, let's just run them down. Okay, so the torque on these is 22 Newton meters, which is about 16.2 foot-pounds. So I'm doing 16.5. Of course, I cannot torque this bottom one, but I understand now why the previous guy made it so tight. He probably had some comebacks in his past. So probably want to make that guy a little bit tight, but not too tight. I'm going to go right there. Yeah, that should be enough. Yeah, that was a little more coolant than I was expecting. I think this thing was a little bit over full. I mean, because it was right up to the top. You could totally see the coolant level when you take the cap off. Like, hopefully you don't have to go through what I went through, but I would say take precautions. Definitely take the belly pan off. Put your drain pan underneath it, just in case. Because yeah, I was just expecting a little bit of coolant, not that much. But it's not the end of the world. A little bit of solvent, it'll evaporate. The solvent rinses the coolant off. The coolant would make the belt squeaky. Oil will make the belt really squeaky, but the solvent will rinse it off and the solvent will evaporate. Let's make sure this thing's tight. So guys, I needed to pull the fan out in order to get this bolt that I dropped. And I suppose I'm sort of glad that I did, because I can see there's a little bit of coolant down in there. That's basically the crankshaft pulley down there. I wish I could illuminate it, but there's so much in the way here in this engine bay. This the intake pipe right here is just in the way of everything. The belt is a little bit wet, so I think what I'm going to do is spray a little more brake clean. Try to rinse it off a little bit better. Just rinsing off the crankshaft pulley. Okay, I think that's good now. So the fan actually is pretty easy to get out. There's one T25 fastener right over here, and you just unsnap this little line right here, unplug this electrical connector, then down here the charge pipe is kind of clipped into the fan, into that sort of rubber grommet thing right there. You pull it forward, I'm pushing it back on. Yeah, good enough for right now. I'll get it back in place later. And there's one more fastener from below. And from underneath, there is a T25 holding the transmission oil cooler on here. So guys, I had an idea, now that I've done this, on how I can maybe do it the next time to avoid the mess. And I've got some sheets of like heavy duty aluminum foil here. Aluminum foil. I would take this and put it down like this, down in the engine, and then fold it underneath here like this. See that? So now it's like a little channel, right? I might go up a little higher over here in the corner, just super high, so that the coolant really can't possibly, get back there on the belt, and it's just going to slide off the front of the aluminum foil right down past everything. That's the way to go. That is what I should have done this time. I never saw anybody do that, but that's a little no muss, no fuss way to do this, and your coolant will just drain right over top of the aluminum foil, straight down. Got a straight shot down to your drain pan. That's the way to do this. All right, let's get this intake manifold back on the car. Now, if you're doing this and you want to take care of multiple things at once, like maybe your walnut blasting and all that stuff, feel free. Getting this intake manifold out seems to be as simple as maybe disconnecting this line on the back right here. I feel a bracket sort of back here. Disconnect this wiring harness. There's probably a wiring harness going to this, of course. Probably not much else. This is not a very big intake manifold, so that thing can come right out, but we're putting it back in. Now, cool thing about these bolts is that the threads aren't right on the beginning, so you can actually put those bolts on and they'll stay on. They're not going to fall off. So that's really nice. I would suggest giving them a couple of turns. Make sure they're threaded on. You don't want to drop them. If you're concerned about dropping them, make sure you buy some extras, because you don't want to go fishing. All right, let's get this done. So we're not going to go too tight. I will come in here and hand torque all of these. I believe the torque on an 11 millimeter is 15 foot-pounds, but I'm doing this one by feel. So incidentally, all that carbon on my valves and everything, almost certainly the one of the causes of my rough running I've been having on cold startup. Also, probably leaky fuel injectors. We're going to take care of all this stuff in upcoming DIYs, in case anybody's curious. So stay tuned, guys. I plan to do everything on this vehicle. So remember, we have our wiring harnesses for the oxygen sensors. This guy, they went around here, underneath, like that. That one snaps there. Don't forget this electrical connector on the oil sensor. I don't know if that's oil pressure or oil temperature. It's probably oil temperature. This connected right under here. And then of course, we have our charge tube, charge pipe. Oh, I think I know what's wrong. This is underneath here. It should be over top of it. Yeah. Angle is just a little weird. There we go. Okay. Does not need to be super tight. So the air box goes back in. So before I do this, let me show you. There's this little rubber grommet here, this one here, and this one here. And they correspond to 1, 2, 3. So that's what you're aiming for and pushing down on. And you got to get this guy in the intake tube there, and this one down in here. So it's a little bit of a juggling act. The spy underneath it. Make sure this tube is on top. Okay. All right. Get your clamps in place. Tighten those guys down. Snap that guy in. Make sure we're down on the rubber grommets. Of course we are. Now this air snorkel, that goes in. Ooh, that one's stripped out. Okay, our engine cover. Let's slip in here. You know, you only have to take this out just because you need to get those oxygen sensor harnesses off. It's really the only reason. I think it was better when I had a broken one of these and this whole thing came off. That was honestly a little easier. Yeah, I mean, that really was easier. This is more of a pain. The design of this thing sucks, pretty much. There's these hooks that you got to get on in the back if yours still exist. I happen to find a replacement one of these in a junkyard that is basically perfect, but it's actually harder to work with because you got to get those hooks in. It's a real pain, actually. Yeah, honestly, it was better the way I got it. It was better when these clips were just totally broken off and I didn't have to unclip that wire every time. I would actually re-break it if I wasn't such a stickler for having like an OEM car so that I can demonstrate, you know, everything you're going to go through. That's typically always my goal. You know, somebody commented on one of my videos recently telling me that Burger Motorsports makes a delete for this tray. Just has the air filters right here, carbon filters. I don't really like that option, honestly, because the whole purpose of this tray and this gasket right here is to seal this area off from this part of the engine bay where all the noxious fumes are, because the fresh air is actually coming out of here. These on either side leads to fresh air. So the fresh air comes in, runs up this channel and up through the air filter housing. So yeah, I kind of want to keep that, but to each their own. Clip these back on. There's a little rubber thingy here. Put your wire back in. Wire, wire, boom. And surprise, my thing is fixed over here that was broken in the last video. This is another housing that I found, which I will run for for now. And I consistently see in the junkyard cars that all of these fasteners are the 8 mils. So that's what I'm going to put on. Mine do not tighten down anymore because that thing back there is stripped out. But I also found another one of those in the junkyard that was actually in pretty good condition, but I don't want to put it on right now. That's it. We're all back together. All right, let's turn the car on and see if she squeaks. Yep, it's fine. Okay, so there was no squeaking when we started the car up. That's good. That means I cleaned thoroughly. I really wish I had thought of that aluminum foil before I went, rushed in and got in trouble. Sometimes I'm a little bit more like Adam Savage, and I want to be a little bit more like Jamie Heineman. I want to stop and think it through before I do anything, but often I don't. I just charge ahead. Oh well, it got the better of me this time. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. Do the silver foil trick. I think that'll save you a ton of pain. It'll be easy, and you can get in and out and you're done. Anyway, I'm gonna leave the belly pan off. I'm not gonna put any other I'm not gonna put any more coolant back in because I think it was overfilled to begin with, and I think there's more than enough in there. But what I'll do is I'll run a drive cycle, heat it up to heat it all the way up, and then let it cool down. We'll check the radiator fluid and see where the level's at. I am going to leave the belly pan off because probably tomorrow I'm gonna film the video on changing the pulleys and the drive belt, so stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.